Just the sound or both?
Are you looking at
So yeah, you guys want to start doing some response?
I still need USB.
Are we in order? Yes, ma'am. Sir. Did you ask for? We are back in order, so you can take the conversation out and then one more to go into the lobby.
today's situation, there was also confusion.
Yeah, apologies. We will have some technical stuff going on.
Civica is a hands-on school that provides STEM activities for families to do.
All right, Amanda's working on our presentation. We're going to try to do two things at once. And I'll try to bring in some context, and then we'll go down the road. So thank you very much, DAC and admin, board, thank you for the time you're spending. First of all, I just want to say, last month I was at a board meeting, and a woman named Ms. Woodson came. And do you remember the term she used when she described what she hoped the board and the community really would settle on? The term she used was gracious professionalism. I don't know if you all remember that when she brought it up, but I was really encouraged by that. I think this board, 99% of the time, really tries to express ourselves that way. And we have, in many cases, really, had a stiff upper lip on some stuff to keep going forward. And so we continue to strive toward gracious professionalism, as do you. I want to encourage you all, board, to not take the bait on this issue that you heard several times from Ms. Arnold about we can only judge what we saw on August 30th. That is untrue. You have the opportunity to ask for any information that you want, and you can consider any information you want. For instance, all of the information from the DAC that came in after our application went in. We're going to ask you, and I'll give this to President Wales. Now, this is several letters that we received from the League of Charter Schools, talking about our application, from the Facilities Financing Grant company, D.A. Davidson, who does business in Colorado, from Ms. Meza and Ms. Evans from the Sports Bar, talking about the negotiations we've had about this, the building. Those things can't have happened beforehand. A charter school is an evolution, and it's an iterative process, and it just continues on and on and on. And so to freeze in time August 30th is unnecessary, and it's untrue. Don't take the bait. You can consider what you want to consider. State statute is very clear about that. And so that's the information we'd like you to see. Also, Miss,
just procedurally, if I could interrupt for a moment. You handed a red envelope that is full of some pages, and we don't have them marked or recorded somehow for the record. So we're going to need to come up with a way that what you just handed is marked for the record for the public hearing itself. Whether or not they're accepted or not, or considered or not, we need them identified.
Yeah, that's cool.
Is verbally an option?
Is that a motion or some seconds to accept them?
How would you like us to do that?
Well,
Can you restate what those are?
sure. Can't remember quite in order, but there's
Well, maybe it.
could I have it, and I can be happy to read them what they are.
Sure. I think that would be helpful if you give a title to them and then we mark them, potentially each with an exhibit A, B, C.
Well, it's not a trial. I don't know that we need exhibits. We can certainly give the board information.
Exactly. I need them marked though for the record so that when we look at this, we know what they are. So whether the numbers, whether the details,
The red package.
The red pack.
The red package.
So it includes a letter from the League of the Charters. It includes the appeal and the resubmittal of the grant application. application. It includes a letter with the contract with the sports barn for the first year facility. It has the,
Okay.
some funding letters.
So I'll go on from there. So, is this counting against my time?
We will not count this against your time. I think this is just a
So Ms.
procedural
Galindo
thing
is
so
going
that
to
it's-
mark 3 letters, 1, 2, and 3 for the record, that the school received from the League of Charter Schools. Number 1, and number 2 is a letter from Ms. Meza and Ms. Evans from the sports barn, the future owners. And number 3 is a letter from D.A. Davidson, talking about our permanent facility financing funding.
And marking them as a numerical exhibits.
Thank you.
So then the next document that you'll see is, we'll mark it as number 4. And number 4 is the the Colorado Department of Education Schools of Choice Unit completed a rubric score of our charter school grant application. That charter school grant application is marked number 4, the rubric score. Also their comments on the rubric, and then our response to their comments. That's the totality of number 4. I don't know if we can pull that, or if y'all have, number 5 then is, begins our summary responses in narrative form to the Colorado Department of Education Schools of Choice Unit rubric score that we received. There are argument about why that was an invalid score. And then item number 6 is our actual application for the Charter Schools Program Grant, which you haven't seen yet. It's a 30-page application. It's nothing like what you've read. And so that's item 6. You received an email last week from Mr. Cottonsteady, who's the Director of Schools of Choice at the Department of Education, and he indicated in that email that to Ms. Samborski, I'm sure she circulated it, that we were being reconsidered for the CSP grant. So I wanted you to see that document as it was heavily referenced in our DAC meeting, the Charter Schools grant program. So does that satisfy your needs for
It's
recording?
recorded for the record. Yeah, thank you for doing that.
I'll bring it back up to Mr. Williams. So,
Excuse me
Yes,
for
ma'am.
interrupting. Is there a way that we're going to see that information, or will we just have the verbal information from it? Or do we need to see that? That's my curiosity also.
Right now, we have the verbal information of it, and the documents have been submitted, and then whether or not the board decides to accept them pursuant to 22-30.5-107 is still to be determined.
Thank you.
okay, and then secondly, Ms. Arnold indicated to us that you all did have a chance to review the DAC questions and responses that we provided back. Is that right? So that's already a part of the record. So those responses, they hit, because the questions that we got from the DAC are almost verbatim the questions that Ms. Arnold described as being those of the administration team, as she just described to you here. They're almost exactly the same in every category. And so our answers back to the DAC, I think, would satisfy almost everything that Ms. Arnold brought up in her presentation. So please do review again our responses to the DAC, line by line. I think that most of what she discussed was brought up. And yeah, again, so I might have a piece at the end, but just please, and be sure that your attorney agrees with me, but there's nothing in the process that says that you shouldn't be thorough and complete in your evaluation of the charter school, not in a time-frozen moment from August 30th. And I hope that you would all agree that makes more sense than not. So, Mr. Alvarez.
And to piggyback a little bit on what Craig's speaking about it, and I think that that's a little bit of a testament of what this board brings to the table as far as being forward thinkers. What was done in August you know, we talk about that with progress monitoring and student improvement. And where we are today in December, I think we can all agree that this board has progressed in developing, not developing the charter school application, but addressing certain things that were brought up by Superintendent Arnold. I do want to thank you, Superintendent Arnold. I do want to thank the DAC as well for your constructive criticism. I know there's not going to be a perfect application, and there's always room for improvement. However, I disagree with certain things that were brought up and ruled. I noted that in certain line items, certain items that were brought up, it was very quick to put does not meet. However, there were certain items there that Superintendent Arnold brought up that all there was were strengths. There were no areas for improvement. It was just strengths. So my curiosity is, when you don't mention any weaknesses or areas of improvement or areas for growth, and you only mention strengths, what was the logic behind the superintendent and the DAC in not rating those areas exceeds as opposed to just meets? Because you mentioned that with the communication plan, you mentioned that with social media, you mentioned that, so I'm curious to say and I'd gladly sit with this board and work through those areas of improvement, but I'm curious to know why there were barely, if not any, exceeds, when we definitely demonstrated and there were no, and all there were highlights of strengths. Also, I do want to bring up that we did mention that we were in several negotiations with several proposed sites for year one at the DAC meeting. So if we are negotiating, and the sports barn was one of those sites and one of those facilities that was brought up. So how does, yes it was, ma'am. I wasn't allowed to speak, but I was present. And that was brought up at the DAC meeting. So again, my curiosity, how do you just go to does not mean as opposed to partially mean, because we did identify certain proposed sites for the facility. We come before you today and show some evidence of this proposed site no longer being a proposed site, but being a temporary site for year one and for the students of this community. Again, transportation. You know, as an instructional leader, we're trained to provide solutions, to be problem solvers, to be forward thinkers, to be innovators, to bring creativity, to bring civica to Colorado, to this community. So, and this may be a question, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions, but if that's the case, and it's a comment. So, I hear a lot about transportation. And you mentioned, Superintendent, that, well, we didn't know how many routes there were, we didn't know the location of the proposed site. But the way that I would have provided, if the district is a support system and is a partner for the charter school, then I would have said something along the lines, and I'm saying with all due respect, well, if you have 2 routes, it's gonna cost you about this. If you have 3 stops, you're looking at about something like this. If you're looking at 4 stops, you're looking at something like this. If you're looking at 5 stops, you're giving us a ballpark figure of what we're looking at as a partner that's committed to work with the charter school. It was just like, well, I don't have this information. I don't know how many routes. I don't know this. I don't know that. That's the easiest answer to say. But if we would be given some direction, then we would have provided some of that information in our budget. But we weren't. I want the school board to understand, and everyone here from the community, and members of the DAC, that Civica Colorado wants to be a good partner, wants to be a great partner with this district. Are we gonna deliver is anyone gonna deliver an application that says exceeds in all categories? Absolutely not. But what this district has is a board that's willing to correct all those areas of recommendations and highlight the commendations and work with you as a true partner. We know it's an administrative fee, And we know that we're gonna be working with you in certain services. Because you will be providing those services. So we're going to be your partner. At the end of the day, there's 6 schools in your district. We'd like to be the 7th. And we'd like to be the school that's gonna help your district shine even more than it's already doing. Your graduation rate is 87%. Outstanding. So, but those are my comments of some of the notes that I took. And again, I just wanted for the record that Civic of Colorado's board's purpose is to be not a good partner, but a great partner with the school board and the district. Thank you.
Can we see if Steph can come on? We have Steph on the line in Germany. So I think it's like 1 o'clock there.
That's a testament that you can do things from anywhere.
Steph, what time is it there in Germany? You might be on mute. We'll give this a second.
Takes a long time to come from Germany.
Well, she's
Oh, no,
been,
she's probably talking.
she's been listening to the whole thing. There we go. Are you on?
I'm here.
Perfect.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on.
So I'm looking at you all live right now on my iPad, and it's let's see here, it's 4:30 in the morning.
Oh.
So it's nice for me. I just want to share. I kind of want to piggyback off of some of the things that Craig said, and I want to piggyback off of some of the things Carlos just said. As I sat here and I watched Ms. Arnold present to you, a lot of the things I heard her say were what we were wanting to know, and I quoted these from her. What we were wanting to know, what we were trying to ask them, and could not get answers from the local board on X, Y, or Z, different topics. One of the things I guess I just wanted to reiterate, and I wanted to kind of, without backtracking, because I don't want to go back to that meeting, but this more so goes moving forward to the topic and the idea of, we would like for you guys to be open on accepting the information, because it keeps getting brought up that we have to, or that you have to review the application that's submitted on August 30th. But yet all the things that we were quoted saying are on the record and that are set in stone. We were not given, if you will, a fair opportunity to answer all of those questions. So if you guys are going to quote us for what was said in the moment, in that meeting, that night, I wish looking back we could have had a better opportunity to answer those questions better for you. I don't know if the strategy was to put us on the spot and to get, see how much we know off the top of our head. I'm not going to sit here and tell all of you that I am an expert in all of these fields, because I promise you with every ounce of me, I am not. I have spent, the time and the efforts and the energies to get better and to learn and to be the best that I can be for the kids in our community and for this school and for what we're trying to create, but I'm not an expert in a lot of these fields. I'm learning as fast as I can, but I'm not there yet. And so to put us on the spot and to ask us these questions and then to now revert back and to quote us in what we said in that meeting, yes, we were flustered. We were searching for answers. We got thrown off our game and it worked. I don't know if that was the strategy or what it was, but so I just want to bring that to the attention of the board to say, I really hope that you guys consider some of these things we brought to the table and to your attention. I do want to reiterate back to the facility, because that is a big issue or a big topic that's come up a number of times, but as it speaks to the facilities, as Carlos said, yes, we did state we had multiple options. We were not in a position because of a transaction from one owner to another. We were not in this position to give any sort of written documentation or to give any sort of guarantee at that moment that we had something locked in. The best we could do in that meeting was to say we do have multiple options. Yes, it was vague, and yes, it was nothing was set in stone, but we were not in a position to do that. So again, I revert back to, I hope, the fact that we have these items and these specific topics kind of locked in now, and that you guys are able to take those into consideration. So that was kind of the piece that I had to tag onto this right now. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Steph.
I just want to address you guys. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys can hear me. You're right in front of me.
But the camera
can't.
can't.
Can you hear me?
We can, but we're the live feed.
Okay. So I just want to address you guys. So this has been a really neat process for 10 months. I love this school district. I know what's going on in the schools. It's been really sweet for me to see what option is going to be great for these kids. I stand by Cohia and Civica in this model. We have walked in for a year and we have been Civica. We've been exactly what we're going to train our kids to be. We're going to be professional. We're going to be knowledgeable. We're going to be kind. We're going to show up. We're going to do our best, and we're going to walk out with our heads up. And I stand behind our application. Our application is phenomenal. Doesn't need any more work. Doesn't need to be resubmitted. It is really strong. We bring it to you. We know this is going to work in this school district. When I went and started thinking about this, we're also business people. Everyone on our board, we didn't try to do this alone. We have Cohia. I work with Carlos all the time. He helps me develop what's inside of my walls. I'm not going to be sitting there trying to develop college and career academies. I'm not choosing and picking curriculum. I'm working with him. That model is what goes on inside of our walls. Academica, I get advice all the time. I'm not sitting here trying to make budget issues, or they are our back office support. They advise our board. We are bringing something to this town that's going to be wonderful. It's not going to fail. Academica oversees hundreds of successful schools. Cohia is one of the top schools in the nation. I brought something to this town that I want to outlive me. So I want you guys to know the heart of this. The people are really good people making good people. That matters to me. The things that we're doing in our school are things that I would want for my own kids. I think some of the things that we're doing are great options. So we stand behind that. I know that having kids prepared for the workforce or college or the military or to be more well-rounded, our model works for all kids. So and everything that's been mentioned here, we've provided not only our application, but after the DAC, probably 20 or 30 more hours of work to answer the other 50 questions. To our CSP grant, we've added more and more information. So I don't think I need to go into that. That is there. At the end of the day, you can take in what you want to take in. This is your guys' decision. Each one of you gets to make your own decision. And I know that you love kids. And I know that this is good for this town. I love this town. I've driven here for 10 years. And I plan on moving here. And I plan on continuing to watch this. And so we have to just keep voting yes for kids. Yes on the bond. Yes on Civica. Yes on the bond next year. This is a $12 million facility. This is like $4 million in land. This is a economic stimulator to our community on top of a great option for kids. We just are not in a situation to say no to this because it's right. It's battle tested. We have done our due diligence to bring you something amazing. And we all just have to keep saying yes. Yes for kids. Yes for this. This is amazing. Yes for kids. So I'm in it with you guys, and I just want to continue to have this professionalism. I want Civica to always be remembered as what we want our kids to be. So that's for me, guys.
In closing, I just wanted to add that you can't fake passion. You can't fake grit. And grit are those that lead with passion and perseverance. No matter how challenging that DAC interview process may have been for some of us, this board has not stopped working for this district. And before you, several things came up to show you that even after the interview process, this board demonstrated the grit that this community deserves, the grit that these students deserve, the grit that these kids deserve, passion and perseverance. No matter what challenges, no matter what setbacks, no matter what barriers, together, as a team, we will work together to overcome them. And I want to close with this slide. At the end of the day, no matter you're in Florida, no matter you're in Colorado, we're all here to serve as students. And we're here for the best interest of the students. And with that being said, let's hear from the students.
Civica provides students with real-life situations that will help us in the future.
is a hands-on school that provides STEM activities for families and students.
River is another school that gives a lot of opportunities for youth and me. Seneca has many academies that will lead you to a better future. Seneca helps you prepare for college and different. We are Seneca!
We wanted you to see that. We love kids. It's the only reason you could go through this process. I learned that. So it's what gives us the grit and keeps us going. So we wanted you to see that.
Okay, do you guys have anything else before we move to some questions? Ladies and gentlemen, how would you like to proceed? I know we have some questions from Scott. Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I need to do these in batches. Let me just say, from the beginning, the passion and the love for kids is obvious. I mean, and you're right. You wouldn't go through all this unless, you know, unless there was some real deep desire to see this thing happen, and I appreciate that. A little bit, just so you know, had a couple careers in my life. Spent the early part of my career as a software engineer, worked for venture-backed startups. Before I came here, spent my time actually not in a pulpit, but helping start in faith communities around Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, and Utah. So I would never represent myself as an expert in education. What I do know a little bit about is entrepreneurialism, and what I do know a good bit about is the world of nonprofits. Got to serve on a lot of nonprofit boards, got to serve on some grant-making capacities, got to give some grants, got to receive some grants. That's the world I know. And so as I'm reading your application and reading all the other documentation that came and everything that did come to me, I did try to read and take in, try to focus on what do I know. What I know is for a project, any project, but a project is to be successful. You've got to have the right people, with the right plan, in the right place. So that's my question. Do we got the right people, with the right plan, in the right place? So I have some questions. And start a little bit broad. I'm curious. The timeline is a little fuzzy for me. So when did the conversations about this start?
Well,
5 years ago?
so our conversations in my world started 20-something years ago.
I mean, this
Actual so years with, wondering like, this is my ideas, how do you bring it to life? And then I think Nolan and I's initial conversations in January, and then we continued on with reaching out to academic, and then we went further, like, this is our vision, how do you make this happen? And we toured multiple schools and, multiple models until we made a connection, and
but Ernest, less than a year.
Yeah, I've been in charters for
I know. This
some
one.
capacity for 20 years. So Sheena and I, for the last 2 years, as I became a charter school professional, she's been talking about a CT charter school the whole time. And so when I finally said, hey, do you want to do this or not? Because you say this a lot. She said, okay, now's the time. I'm ready. And that was in January, I think, late last year, January last year.
Okay. So one of the things is that the process for the approving of these kind of things is known, right? Like most of us we're bound by what the state, tells us to do. There are deadlines. You submitted the application. We've got so much long to do that. And I realize it's not been the smoothest process. I mean, that seems evident. There's nothing like a brand new school board member being thrown into the deep end, which is sort of how I feel right now because I got sworn in a week and a half ago. But that's known, right? It's known. The process is known. We all know the process. So at a certain point, we can only respond as fast as we can respond. So I will say from the beginning, I'm kind of like, what was the hurry? like what was the hurry in this, that we had to move this quickly? It seems like so much of what we were doing, or so much of the problems we were into, could have been alleviated if we had a little more time up front. But as soon as you all submit an application, that starts a clock for us, that we have to do things. What I'm seeing is I see a lot of stuff, maybe it didn't go as well as it could have. Part of it feels like we're in a bit of a hurry. But, you know, when the starting gun went off was up to you guys, right? Like that's not our choice. So what is, I mean, I guess, is there some deadline I don't know about, or?
I think the starting gun went off 50 years ago when we built Roosevelt and Ledford, and then later when we built Milliken, and spent years forecasting that growth, and then we didn't get in front of the capacity issues at the schools.
Right, I hear you.
So we have $16.5 million in deferred maintenance on those two schools 2 years ago. So when you're asking what the rush is, in 2020, next year, you'll see the biggest jump in enrollment that the district has ever experienced in 2020. So if there was ever a rush, I would say it would be failing overcapacity schools with the biggest enrollment bubble you'll ever see in August of 2020, the year we want to open. So that to me suggests...
I don't disagree, but that's a problem we need to fix for everybody. I got 3,800 students that I need to care for, and I need to fix that for all of them, right? And so I appreciate that, but I need to start there. I have some, go ahead.
I was gonna say, during this process, I never felt that we rushed anything. I felt like we were prepared. Academica has been a great support. Cohea has been a great support. We have many 80 years of education just on our board. I never felt rushed at all. I felt like we went through a very thorough review process with the league, multiple reviews with them. Until you said that, I didn't feel we were rushed at all. I feel like we're right on track for the opening date that we had set. And the rush is, I see the kids, and so the rush is that students are, dropping out, and students need other options today. It 87%, that's great, but that's also a lot of kids that are dropping out. So I do feel a rush. I do feel like, I thought this when I moved here 10 years ago. I was like, okay, so where's your options? Where's your school? So I just want you to know, I've never felt rushed. I've taken 10 years in this district before I even went, all right. So I just want you to know that.
I understand. So let me be also clear, so everybody's clear, what it is that you're asking for, right? So you're asking for permission to do something, right? If it was just about permission, fine. You know, it's just about permission, fine. If this was a private school, somebody, brought up the idea, the value of liberty. I'm from Eastern Montana. We're kind of into that, right? So like that's a bar. But that's not just what you're asking for. You're not asking permission, but you're asking for the ability to leverage taxpayer dollars. And if you meet your current census, probably a little over $1 million in your first year of taxpayer dollars, right? Well, I'm here elected by taxpayers to represent taxpayers. Well, that bar shoots up. And then the other one, and Carlos, you brought this up, becoming the 7th school, right? You want to be the 7th school in our district. You want to be a public school in this district, listed aside all the other schools. And that not only comes with permission, and not only comes with funding, it comes with for anyone especially new to this community, an implicit endorsement. An endorsement of this school that we think this is a school that is willing and able and is capable of standing next to all the other schools in our district. And anyone moving into our community that's going to do that is going to look at who, is going to assume that somebody went through this process and somebody said that's okay. Well, that somebody is us. And what I don't hear happen, I don't hear that earlier in this process that the board was brought in. I don't, my understanding is that you never requested a formal work session, with this board to understand the goals and the alignments for the district and how what you might do align with that. There's a process for that. We have work days where we don't make decisions, but we get together and we talk about things. that was never requested. And so again, if it was just about you all doing what you all wanted to do based on your reputations and what you could do, that's one thing. But if we chartered you, then we as a board are saying something about this project. And we have to do a very high level of due diligence for it. So like, I appreciate that the process wasn't perfect. I appreciate sometimes it had challenges. I appreciated that DAC was particularly, struggling. But the accountability process should be, because we love our kids. And we want our kids to be safe, and not just physically safe. We want them to be in a safe environment where, there is accountability present and we know what's going on. So I actually have some very kind of,
On a side note, really quick, when we submitted our letter of intent, I thought at that point we were told not to interact with the school board. I never even knew that was an option. One thing about Civic is we're really good at working with people, so we thought that was an option.
Sure,
that was my
that's part of the
understanding.
process, but before you submit a letter of intent, you can have all the conversations you want. And you can request whatever you want. That's my understanding. Am I wrong about that?
That's not our understanding.
Okay. So, community groups come and meet with us all the time about ideas or things they want to do or whatever. We can't commit to anything, but we can be in dialogue and we can be in conversation and we can know what's coming.
That sounds wonderful. That's just not how this process has gone. We would have loved to know that. Just since we've done our letter of intent, Craig, am I right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We were given very clear indication that.
Well, yeah,
not to
And
reach
the
out.
board members recuse themselves from talking to us as well.
Mhm.
Oh, certainly.
So you're saying
Again,
prior to.
But again, the letter of intent starts a process.
Right.
And like I said, I'm new and I'm learning this. The letter of intent starts a process, but before that, people can come talk to us, groups can come talk to us, informal groups can come talk to us and say, hey, what are you doing? What's the vision of the school? We have this idea, how does it fit in? And then yes, once you start the formal process, different rules kick in. But there's a process before that.
The process also says that the district administration will form a team to work with the charter school and come work through different issues during the application process after intent. And so when we did that, Ms. Arnold explained, it was over the summer, she explained, I am your only contact. I will form teams based on what you ask me and do not contact anyone else in the district. That was very clear. And so, and then the board members reached out at that point and said, yeah, we really can't have individual discussions with you. So I think there's two sides to it.
There probably is. So I just want to be clear, and I want everybody to be clear what you're asking for. And I think that's important. Because again, we're talking about not just permission, lots of taxpayer money, and an endorsement from this body. And for me, one of the biggest things is the accountability piece. And is there a system of accountability in place? And not just academic accountability, but accountability in the leadership structure. So one of the things that I find concerning is I understand that there are existing relationships between all the current board members. You have existing relationships with the people on your board.
We've been together for a year.
As a board. But you know each other. There are things.
Yeah, I didn't know Stephanie or Rex or Carlos before this process.
Okay. So, but it's the board that you all have put together.
Yes.
Okay. So, you have identified already who the administrator of the school is going to be, is that correct? The principal?
Yes.
Yeah. Of our,
Yes.
who's that?
Yes. Sheena McCown.
Okay. So, one of the questions that came up in the review was an unclarity of the process for how board members would be backfilled. One of the hallmarks of accountability especially in the nonprofit world, is, an independent governing board married with, separate from the staff, right? You need to have that level, of accountability. So not having any clear understanding for how your position as the president of this board is going to be backfilled, and how we're going to continue to have some sort of independent operation is a concern, given one thing that we know is that charters don't automatically have the same level of accountability as normal public schools.
Mr. Scott, may I speak on that?
Absolutely.
So we are aware that that Sheena would step down for the board, and we are also aware that boards need to meet diverse requirements, and you want your board to be as diverse
as possible. You don't want your board to be led just by educators. You, and other boards that I sit in, you have a plethora of different professionals sitting on the board, independent from the school. You'll look at some things like board members that'll be involved in finances, accounting. You'll have attorneys, or an attorney that may sit on your board. You have educators that sit on your board. You may have some other community leaders. But one of the ones that I think is also very important in diversifying our board even more is adding a voice of the community. So having a parent representative. And moving forward, when Sheena steps down, if the recommendation from the school board varies from the recommendation from the DAC and the administration, is that we're going to open it up to the public and to the community to identify our next board member. And my number one priority from the governance standpoint as sitting on the board is to make sure that we have representation from the community. And I understand we lack that now. But for the record, I am telling our entire board that we are seeking to replace Sheena McCow with a parent representative with a voice of the community.
And again, I know this has been a point of contention. I don't believe that was in what was submitted to us. So that's new. I like to learn things too. So I'm glad to learn. So that's helpful.
Mr. Scott, Mr. Easton and Ms. Potberg are both parents of students that will be at the school and community members. So I think that box is pretty well checked as it is, but so I don't know how that would be new information.
Well, that is going to be the process for filling. But there has to be independence. There has to be an independent governing board from, especially the primary staff. I mean, there's a level of accountability from that. Every nonprofit strives for that. Especially once you start to take on other people's money and take on, the responsibility, take on things from other folks, right? I mean, the system kind of has to be above reproach because we're talking about the kids. We need safe environments for the kids. I work for the church. I know what happens when system of accountabilities are not in place. I know how bad it can get, right? When systems aren't accountable and checks and balances aren't in place and children are involved. So I think making sure that anything and everything we do structurally to make sure that accountability is in place in the way that we need it is of paramount importance, right? And so just, I have questions on other topics, but I'm gonna.
Does anybody else have anything on this is where we're at right now? And I would just like to add to that. One of the important things we have to do, and I see this a lot with some of the other boards that I serve on, is that what we want to make sure that we're doing here is making a distinguish that we're not looking at individuals here, but we're looking at the policies and the processes that you want to put in place to make this go moving forward. So while Ms. McCowett and Mr. Easton and Ms. Potberg we believe that they're stand-up individuals in our community, there may come the day that somebody is not a stand-up individual in the community who finds their way into your leadership. And we want to make sure that accountability piece is in place to prevent that from ever becoming a damaging factor. So that's where this line of questioning is coming from. It's not directed personally to anybody, but it's more directed towards the process as a whole. So
I thought we had a very thorough part on governance in our application, Craig.
Yeah, I think Steph wants to jump in. Go ahead, Steph.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Sorry, my live feed, I'm a couple minutes off, so I'm trying to intertwine at the right moment. So if I'm a couple seconds late, I apologize. To speak on Mr. Scott and Mr. Will's comments about the independence of the board, I 100% agree. I want to backtrack and just discuss a little bit from my vision and my beliefs, and this question's come up before from other people. When people say, well, why do you already have your administrator picked? I think in all of the people we've talked to over this journey who have started charter schools or who have built charter schools, one of the challenging pieces to the puzzle is finding the right administrator to put in that position. I feel like from our standpoint, we are blessed because not only does Sheena understand the mission and vision and of what we're trying to create here, but also, I mean, this was her dream. This has been her dream for 20 years. And so I feel like that piece to it is a positive from that standpoint. But to talk about the independence of the board, absolutely, 100%. I just want to tag along onto that comment. Yes, we need to bring, you know, I plan to stay on the board because I plan to keep that mission and vision of what we've tried so hard to create, keep that alive and keep that there. But in addition to, yes, we will bring on independent people. We will create a board that is very diverse in all backgrounds, as diverse as we can in all backgrounds that we can get on board. But also, yes, creating that independent board so that there is accountability measures in place. Because absolutely, at the end of the day, that needs to happen. And I, as a board member that will stay on the board for years to come, hopefully, understand that, and that is a piece of that puzzle that we have to have accountability for our administrator, for our principal, for our school, for our teachers, all of that. So I guess I just wanted to add that.
So let me just also clarify where that concern is coming from. And I know you would prefer we just took the Colorado Charter School grading and threw it away, but it is the one we have now. I would be more than happy to review the new one when you get rescored.
The charter schools grant?
Yeah, by then.
That's gone. I wouldn't consider that. That is no longer a rubric or score. They threw it out. So to consider that would be an error on your part in any sort of later diagnosis of this process. That doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. What I'm going to say is they noticed the same thing that I noticed. So I will be curious to see the new one if they notice the same things as well.
Okay, you haven't read the charter grant application, so you can't know what they are grading. You've read the charter school application of 150 pages.
Yes,
They got
you're right,
30
you're right,
pages.
absolutely right.
Well, you're doing a pretty good job.
You want me to go my
Well,
next
yeah,
questions?
I'm kind of building off of some of
Okay.
the stuff you're doing.
I have
so.
a comment that I would like to make.
Go ahead.
This process is a partnership, and our most critical information comes from our professional staff, the administration, including all those that have been mentioned besides Ms. Arnold. And I would expect that they would come back with the most critical evaluation of your application for us, because we rely on them as the professionals to provide that to us. And I would just like to say that I believe that they did the job that we needed them to do. Perhaps not everything was perfect in the process, but they did the job that they felt that they were supposed to do for us, and we will rely on them for our information.
So I have questions, and anyone who wants to answer them from Academica is welcome to. I have questions specifically about Academica. Admittedly, I come from Montana. We don't have charter schools in Montana, so this is all new. So my understanding is Academica is a for-profit company, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Headquartered in Miami, Florida.
Yeah, well, there's several different offices. The group that would be supporting here, back office, like accounting staff and that type would be in Las Vegas.
Okay, okay. So how many schools is Academica currently supporting in the state of Colorado?
Just one right now.
And where is that?
Arvada, Westminster, it's right on the line.
Is that new? It's not listed on your website?
It's 4, I want to say 4 years in.
Okay, well, it's not listed on your website.
I don't know. I don't look at our website pretty much.
There you go, that's all right.
Noted.
There you go. So on page 69 of the application, it says that one of the Academica's jobs is to identify or to make staffing recommendations and human resource coordination. So my first job out of college was actually doing HR software, know something about HR, care a lot about HR. I'm curious how HR would function in this, and specifically in the situation if say a teacher or a staff member had an issue with the administrator or somebody like that. Who's providing that HR function? I know you're doing the payroll, but like who provides that sort of that HR function and that kind of staff support in that way?
So we have several attorneys on staff. Obviously, we do not fire anybody. We provide recommendations, but we will sit in. Let's say somebody did have a complaint against the principal. We would sit in as an HR function and provide that report to the board. In that sense, if it was a complaint against the principal themselves,
right.
They were doing something. But
and that's just an example.
Yeah, in that example, or let's just say it was like two teachers having a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If the principal asked for our assistance, it would simply be to provide assistance, whether the legal things like FMLA or any of those type of issues. But it's a support role.
Okay, so my question is, who would they actually go to?
We have 2 attorneys on staff.
But they would go to academic.
Yeah.
So if I'm a staff person at your school and I have an issue.
We would ask you, we would send them to the principal first. I'm saying if it wasn't resolved at that point, we would, if somebody called us, so I got a call this morning.
Right.
And I had said, have you talked this up to the principal? They had not, so I said, you have to take it to the principal first. Then they call us, as backup support if they felt like their grievance wasn't being heard or something about the administrator. We were simply a support.
Okay.
Yeah, if it was going up to a higher level, but usually there's a distinct path of how the conflict should go through.
Right. So my concern is I'm a little concerned about the path of accountability under that arrangement. You know, because you both would, it seems like you would be in a position of both being, you know, a vendor of, shall we say, you know, the school, but also then playing a role of accountability as well. And I feel like that's a lot of hats to wear.
Our role is to provide the report to the people who have the authority, nothing beyond that.
So where would that report go?
If it needed to the board. The first point is to the principal. If it was against the principal or it wasn't resolved, and it was a conflict, we would go to the board.
I think one of the things you're asking too is that, so I have a parent complaint. I go to the principal.
Mm-hmm.
I still have the complaint, it hasn't been resolved. So all of our schools have a community parent liaison that kind of serves as, if the principal didn't address your issue and you still feel that you want to voice your opinion and you want to get to the next line before getting to the board, you would go to the community parent liaison, which kind of serves as a buffer between the board and the school to try to mitigate or resolve the problem.
That's helpful. I do appreciate that, and that makes some sense to me. I'm a little more concerned around staff issues, just because there's a power dynamic in play, you know, there, and having robust processes that help you, you know, mitigate the power dynamic at play and still let everyone feel like they've been heard, you know, that things have been managed well. So I have a little bit, I would say, I have unease about, you know, academic being a piece of that structure. Good, bad, or different? I don't know.
I think academica's role is more involved when it gets to the legal part. So just like modeling after the school and the network, Civica Colorado will have a parent community liaison identified that would address any needs or concerns or complaints from parents or students that the principal has not been able to address. And then with that individual that's identified would try to mitigate, would either work with the principal to try to resolve the issue or bring it to the board if it gets to that point.
Any other questions about HR before I move on?
Actually, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dirk.
Fairly simple, but in your application, one of the advantages of the charter school process is that you do not need to hire certified teachers. Right? They can be any knowledgeable individual that has some sort of background in the subject matter. Correct? Is that true?
Correct, in Colorado.
In Colorado, that's true, right? So in your application through talk about teachers and hiring, I didn't see anything about background checking or of those professionals that you're going to be hiring. Just wondering if that is part of the process. Who does that? What kind of accountability is involved in that piece of the hiring process?
Well, sorry, it wasn't directly addressed. I think it is in terms of fingerprint background checking of teachers in the addenda, but if it's not, our intention would be to fingerprint background check.
It may be in the addenda.
all
In the
the
actual
teachers.
application, it says, and I realize that it's part of the application, but it talks very specifically about parent volunteers needing a background check. But it doesn't say anything about teachers needing a background check.
For sure, fingerprint background check, all teachers.
And who would be responsible for that? Is that something academic would be taken care of as well?
Administration would take care of that. It's part of the
So again,
hiring
and going back to Mr. Sosano, working and being a partner with the district, our fingerprint background, our even drug screening goes through our district, and the teachers are cleared through the background check and the drug screening, and then the Office of Professional Standards sends an email to the principal notifying him or her if the applicant has been cleared.
That's what happens at Cohia right now.
Correct, yes, sir.
So that would be, we'd replicate that process here, which means the district would be doing the actual background check?
That would be an option for us, right? I mean, there's lots of options. We'd like to get to the place where we can hire a teacher. For sure, we'll background check in accordance with law and best practice as well. If we could partner with the district, especially to save money, we'd love to do that. But adhere to the standards that the district would require would be, I'm sure, part of the contract you guys would prescribe.
In working with our districts, we have a 5% administrative fee that we pay to the district. And that 5% administrative fee goes to services, for example, like fingerprinting and drug screening. So we would have to come then before the district and go into negotiations and have those discussions that we would be using the district as a resource and what the fee would be, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Director Hall?
I have a follow-up question on the drug screening. In my previous employment, I ran a clinic that did drug screening. And different companies based in different states have different standards of drug screening. Academica, you said that our field office would be based in Nevada, I remember?
Oh, sorry. Craig and a few others are here, but
Yeah.
the vast majority of that stuff will be
So our drug screening standards, would they be Colorado standards?
Colorado.
Or national?
Colorado. It would be just with like the DOE with background check, somebody when they get their license, we could follow that.
So I guess my main question is, will you be testing for Colorado teachers THC or not?
We would follow whatever the district's policy is as far as making a candidate eligible to be hired, whatever that process may be. If that is your process, then we would be in support of that. I've had conversations. There's things here that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Being good partners through administrative fees and resources that we'll have available through the district, we would comply with whatever your policies may be, and maybe your policies have that, and we would not object to that.
I was just curious what your standpoint was on that.
Just so just so you understand too, Chris is our local academic representative. We interact with him on a daily basis. When we need experts in certain areas, then they are called in, whether it's budget or whatever it is. So I mean, it's a huge team. We have, just like whatever the district office does for these schools, Academica does for us. So of course we have experts in every single area, but Craig is our local representative. He's with us, he's become part of this town. So I just want you to know that. That makes it a little bit easier to understand.
And I think one of the things too to point out, and Carlos, you talked about not reinventing the wheel and best practices. The engineer in me loves it, totally agree. I'm a preacher, we steal all our sermons, right? Like you just do that, you read. It's not stealing, it's recycling. One of the challenges, I think one of the reasons a lot of these questions are coming up is we're not a particularly large district, we're not small, but we're not huge. We have a charter school, we have a method of supporting that charter school that has developed over the years and that we're all fairly comfortable with. Seems like you all made a determination to do something different, you know, right from the beginning of all of this. So that's part of the conversation we didn't get to have because that you kind of brought it to us this way. So one of the challenges we have to say is we are facing the potential of having 2 different charter schools in a relatively small district operating in 2 very different ways with 2 levels of support, you know, and so how is that going to complicate our factor here? I mean, we already have to treat our typical public schools one way, and then we have to treat KQA in a little bit different way. And now if we bring this school on, then we have to now treat you in a whole other way with different understandings. So, I mean, I think that's part of why some of these questions are coming up is we are aware and we know that there are systems of accounting in place for the system we already have, but you're asking us to take on a new one.
Sir, we didn't want that at all. When we corresponded with Superintendent Arnold, particularly on, looks like June 25th of 2019, asking for these preliminary discussions and information about transportation, information about food services, a range of costs for things that the district could provide us. Ms. Arnold said, we will not be using the KQA model for a new charter as our processes have changed, and that charter happened years ago. Please follow the attached documents I've given you. We ask again about we won't know what the, we said we don't know what our actual enrollment is until the actual application is due. Should we make assumptions on some of the costs based on the cost the district charges to KQA? Ms. Arnold, please do not make assumptions on the KQA model. Please follow the application process we've attached. So we tried to follow the KQA model. We were given clear direction that that was not a standard that we could use.
Well, I do understand respectfully that probably in detail, absolutely. But again, I wasn't there, I wasn't part of it. But I don't understand, and KQE is not engaged in spirit, it's still very different. So I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here.
We think that's a benefit. I mean, we want this district to have different options. I think other options are what we're going for. That's kind of the joy of charter schools. And also, you know, KQA has a waiting list of like 400, so we were driven by the fact that we do need another school. And when you don't, I think we should be excited about having those different options. We're the ones who are doing the oversight and we're reporting to you as authorizers. So that wasn't, we're excited about something different. We're excited about something that is applicable to our district. So we weren't trying to replicate KQA at all during the process.
Can I just add, and kind of in the spirit of what Carlos had mentioned earlier about being a great partner, I feel like a lot of those things can be just by picking up the phone and talking to each other. Communication will be the very top key, I think, for all sides. I find that when people just, you know, when we send documents, even like when we send documents, there's no intention behind it, it's just words. Numbers are cold, I think we've all heard that. So just communication is something that could easily help solve that process in the long run. Obviously there'll be road bumps, I'm not going to admit that there won't be, but I believe if people are willing to talk to each other, you can go a long ways.
And I don't disagree, and unfortunately we're all recently been encumbered by open meeting laws and all those things I just learned about at CASB Center. I have one more set of questions, just curious about, again, for Academica, and this may be for both Academic and Civica. I saw your fee structure as part of the application. You know, that's done on a graduated scale. The one thing I didn't see, and I'm just curious about, is obviously at a certain point when it's 0 to 164 students and you're not charging anything, you're not making any money, right? So somewhere there's a break-even point for you all. Have you calculated what that break-even point is in terms of enrollment so that it becomes long-term sustainable for everybody?
We're in it for the long haul. I don't have a break-even point, but I can tell you Doral, Colorado's been around for 4 years and we've never charged a fee. We are committed to the networks we work with for the long haul. And due to the number of students we serve, we are able to absorb some of that. Obviously, we couldn't do that forever on tons of programs, but we are committed to the long haul of it. I don't have a number for you, but I can tell you that we've never charged a fee to Doral, Colorado. And we're 4 or 5 years in.
And we don't go into that too in depth because we know that we wouldn't do this without Academica, we walk this, and then also Carlos can speak to it. Cohea has been with Academica since the very, very beginning, right? You
Yeah,
wouldn't even.
so I can give you an example. For Cohea, we were waived the management fees for the first 2 years of operations.
Right. I do understand that. There is an understanding though where you all will be deeply embedded and enmeshed with a for-profit company, and eventually for-profit companies tend to lose tolerance for losing money. So that's my concern. Is, you know, and if you don't know, if there isn't a goal in mind that we get to at some point, you know, I'm just curious if we know what that is, because your fees are ranging from $0 to $550 a student, depending on the size of the school, and you know, somewhere in there you switch from losing money to hopefully at least breaking even, and maybe it's the $550, I don't know. But that's where that question comes from, because I want to be in this long term too, but you also have to know what everybody's needs are, right? Like, what does everybody need to get out of this in order for it to be a long term thing? And a for-profit company eventually going to need to make profit. So I'm just curious about where that threshold is, and if we don't know it, I understand, but that's where that question comes from.
I have not calculated that number.
Okay.
I think something that you need to take in is that we are worth the investment. We are gonna be the first network school to Cohea. They wouldn't have stood behind us unless they believed in us for the long haul. When you think of it from a business model, Academica has that model and that for us because they believe in us. This wouldn't be happening if they didn't believe this was gonna be a good investment in the long haul. So if we put our business hats on, this makes sense. They would have chose someone else. We are worth the investment. You're gonna have to, at the end of the day, sit and think about that too.
May I ask just a question that just reminded me?
Sure.
How many 612? So the 612 models are very challenging because obviously we know the challenges we all face with high school. How many 612 charter applications have come before the board within the past decade that have chosen to come to this community? And I know you just recently elected, but maybe anyone that's been part or part of prior DACs, you have any of that information?
To my knowledge, none.
I think the League of Charters said there hasn't been an application in 19 years.
612?
Any.
Oh,
But again, so I'll go back to this. This isn't a reflection on how you're going to run the school or how the school's going to perform. But it does come down to, at the end of the day, if you're unable to, if the school is unable to perform to the standards that the Civica network has put together or that Academica has set forth, and they have to say, look, we got to cut ties. We need to go in a different direction. This is not working. This is not working for us. I sincerely hope that's not the case, but it could be an eventuality that we have to take into consideration. At some point, then the district then would need to look at possibly absorbing the services that both of your networks are providing. And so I think that's probably the genesis of the question is, you know, what do we need to, as a school board, as we're preparing our budgets every year, what do we need to be looking at from you guys as far as your enrollment numbers so that we can make sure that you guys are going to be, that Academica is going to be behind Civica and the Civica network is going to be behind Civica. It has no question about how you are perceived to be running the school, but it is a reality that we have to consider.
And that we've questioned and dived into multiple times.
Yeah, I'll just be, we walked away once. It was not because we were losing money. We were, but that had nothing to do with it. There was through our own internal checks, we found some fraud happening at the school. The board did not take what we felt was appropriate action to deal with that. I'm not going to put my CPA license on the line. I'm the one that the auditors did find it. I flat out handed them a packet of the stuff, and we said that we walked away in that incident. But that's the only time that I've been involved with Academica. Honestly, that my involvement goes back maybe, I don't know, close to 10 years now, that I've seen an academic walk away from something.
Okay.
So I know that doesn't give any guarantees, but I just want you guys to know that that is my experience with them and our commitment to our networks.
Presumably more schools of though that have closed. I mean, not maybe you not walking away, but how many?
None since I've been involved.
We worked
We
hard
have
to
a-
bring a powerful model. You guys, all those questions you're asking, we've asked. We truly, our heart is to bring you something that is going to last and outlive us. So everything you've asked, we've had those hard conversations multiple times.
So,
It's getting late.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Wales.
Let's talk about that. So you clearly have had a lot of conversations amongst your board, with Cohia, with Academica. What I didn't see in your application was before the application happened, any conversations with the community about the need for a school like this. Clearly you have support in the community, some support in the community. What I didn't see was an evidence of need from the community that said, this is something that we need to do. Right, so all these questions that we're asking, I think, really start there. I didn't see in the application any surveys, any input from the community. Now, there are letters of support. There are intents to enroll. How many of those kids actually show up day one, we'll see. But what I didn't see was before the process began, any kind of input from the community in that application. So I wonder if you can address that process, why those conversations didn't happen before you filed the application, why we kind of are where we are now.
Well, I think to begin with, it doesn't have to be a conversation between us and the community. The conversation.
But it does, because those are the kids who are going to show up at your school.
Right, so the conversation was begun by the board of directors in addressing how do we get a bond passed in 2017? And then walking away from that bond, but doing all of those surveys that told us that the capacity of the schools schools were approaching capacity, optimal capacity, that the schools were aging, that a huge enrollment bubble was coming, and that, and we don't talk about it much, but that the school performance status says that we had room to grow in school performance. And so the conversation about school, the need for a new school, the need for quality seats, is how the charter school world puts it. The conversation about the need for quality seats was going on in 2017, 2018, and 2019 bond.
Amongst the district and in the school.
Correct, yes,
But
sir.
not in the community.
Well, I think is the board reflective of the community?
Sure, to a certain extent. But what I'm saying is there's 3,800 kids in this district, and you have 150 or so that have said they would come in. And throughout the application, you also made some assumptions that you're going to bring kids who choice out of the district back.
Hope so.
Hope so, but we haven't proved that. Because
A lot of those
because
parents
there's
have
no
come
surveys.
enrolled.
Sorry?
We have interacted with a lot of those parents and a lot of those
Before the
kids.
application or since the application?
Well,
I guess my
Before
point
the
is, my,
application.
really? Before the application? 'Cause that was not clear in the application, that there was evidence that we're gonna bring kids back to the district that have choiced out to Greeley and Thompson and Meade and all these other places. So I guess my question is, where is the evidence that the need existed for this school prior to the application? Since you started talking about it, since you've had your community meetings, since you've had Mr. Easton out there giving his very impassioned pleas about the school, there's been a lot of support, and I can see why. But prior to that, that didn't exist.
I think one of the powers of our board is not only have Nolan and I taught in this district forever, Steph, Rex, and Nolan interact with the people of this community. They've raised here, graduated from here. We talk to each other in Johnstown, Milligan. I think you know that all the time. And I'm around here. So we have conversations with parents, kids, all the time. That's who the four of us are.
Sure, so am I. I'm a parent, and I have
Right.
kids in the district.
So you know how Johnstown Milligan works.
Absolutely.
We
I've
talk
lived
in the
here
grocery
15 years.
store,
I
we
certainly
actually pick
understand.
up the phone.
Absolutely,
Like, we're that.
absolutely. I understand. Still, I hadn't heard about Civica before the application showed up. My wife teaches in the district. You know, we talk to those communities. We attend Reverend Scott's church. We hadn't heard about it before those communities. And not saying it's a reason to deny anything. My question is, why wasn't that need and that evidence clear in the application prior to actually producing the application? What I saw in the application was our schools are bad, right? That's what I saw through and through our application. Graduation rates are low, achievement is low, we don't offer enough CTE, which I don't think is true because we are addressing those CTE options in the district. I did not see any evidence of support from the community prior to the application. Since the Facebook ads have been out, since the public meetings have been happening, that support I think is there now, but it wasn't beforehand. So what problem did you think you were solving before the application came to be? And what was the evidence from the community, other than a couple of conversations amongst each other, that evidence was there?
Can I answer this question? Am I not supposed
No,
to?
we're not going to take comments from the public. We close that
I don't know how
portion.
much further to go into that.
Well, I think to build on what Director Sasano is saying.
If Director Sasano I think he just posed that as a question, Ms. Potler did have an answer.
fantastic.
Sure.
Go ahead, Steph.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So to answer Mr. Sultano's question, I don't know that there necessarily was a problem that we came out and said, we've got this problem, we need to fix it. And one of the things that, in part of that conversation, what was the need? What is the evidence? I guess for me and my personal experience, for all the years that I have been in this district, I've been a parent of a student in this district for 16 years now. And basically, the conversations I've had with people, the people that are looking for other options for their kids, I know me personally looking for options. Colorado Early Colleges is a school I toured for my child. You know, I reached out to them 10 years ago when my kid was in elementary school. And so it's not necessarily what's the evidence. I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is communities around us are creating options for their kids. And so I guess from my personal experience to say as a parent, you know, I want to be a part of bringing something like this to our community. Was it that our school needs this, our town needs this, like we're going to fail if we don't have this? No, that's not the case at all. I think it's just to be able to offer, you know, kids are doing all kinds of different things. And to have this as an option for kids in our community, instead of, for instance, myself leaving and going somewhere else to experience this option, I would much rather be a part of bringing an amazing option like this to our town and to our community. So, did we go about it? I guess I don't know what the formality is of how you go about figuring out what that need is. For me personally, it was the numerous conversations I had over and over again with other parents and other community members and other business owners. I own a couple small businesses, and so I network and communicate a lot with small business owners and even bigger business owners. And there is we're in ag. My husband, you know, owns his own dairy and his own farm, and I see every day the struggles that it is to get people to come and work. And so in ag construction and a number of other jobs out there. And so I guess to create my vision and my view personally was to say, hey, what a cool opportunity based on the numbers in Weld County and the amount of jobs that, you know, the industries where the majority of the jobs are, and to be able to say we can create something like this in our district to bring to our kids in our district. I guess that's the baseline for it. So what was the need, or what was the, I don't know what the word that you used was, what was the data or the facts behind it? I guess I didn't know that we had to have that to be able to do this, is where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. I don't know that it's necessary. I don't know that it was required in the application. My question is, when we talk about things like transportation and food service and, you know, things like that require numbers, it would have been much better for us to be able to say,
yeah,
based on a survey that you all had done, I don't know, you had conversations, you can't quantify conversations, that, you know there's going to be 150 kids, and you know they live in Pioneer Ridge and Carlson Farms and Milliken and all those places, so we can say, have a much easier process through this application if that evidence had been proven beforehand, rather than after the application was made. So I guess that's where I'm coming from with that evidence question.
And I think part,
Go ahead.
yeah, I just want to go on with what Director Sasan was saying. I think the challenge is, I'm not sure. I know we need to invest in our schools in this community. Very clear. My daughter goes to Lefford. Very clear. That we need that. It's part of what excites me about serving my community in this way. I got into this to serve my community, and it's not personal. It's not any individual. I got to serve my community. We need to invest in our community-based education. Most of what you have referenced makes that very clear. Most of the public comments we heard made it very clear that we need to make additional investments in this community, in our capacity, around just raw capacity, our capacity, all those sorts of things. What I haven't heard is, and what I don't know is this the right investment to make? Is this the solution to even some of our problems? Yes, we have problems, but is this the right solution worth the investment that it's going to take that our community and that our kids need at this time? And I have no doubt, and I think this is kind of maybe what Director Sam is getting to. I have no doubt that you can find a number of people who are dissatisfied with the current conditions of the schools in our district. And I've heard a lot of that tonight. What I don't know is that the tip of an iceberg of people who would like to be part of this ongoing thing you're doing? Because at a certain point it stops being about what you're not and starts being about what you are, right? Are people interested in opting in long-term, year after year, 150, 120 kids every year into this model of education, right? That, I think, is the thing that I don't see anything that demonstrates that that's the case. And if something happens, if something goes wrong or closes, it's this room that people are going to walk into and say, why did you think that was a good idea? Why did you allow so many taxpayer dollars to go into something, right? And so like what Greg Son was saying, you know, even a survey, I mean something, anything that surveys not just the people, you know, who are in our individual networks, but the community at large, would have gone a long way to demonstrating to me that there's need not just for an alternative to our schools, but there's a need for this alternative to our schools. I don't have anything that says that to me yet.
You don't have the evidence, but you have the conversation. And I know that's not good enough. That doesn't suffice. But before I was approached, I don't live in Colorado. The folks that know this best are the people that live here and that have been in this community for a long time. And I understand that maybe not everyone in this community was involved in those initial conversations. But when I was approached and they selected our model, I have to trust the people from our community. I have to trust Rex Beal. I have to trust Stephanie. I have to trust Sheena. Because they well know what are the needs of this community. And that they could have chosen, we have academic supports over 190 schools throughout the United States. And there are several different models that can be chosen. But when I was approached by the community. And maybe they were the voices of the community. And that was their role. Do we have substantial evidence to show before the board about that? No, we do not. But we do have their voices. We do trust what they felt are the needs of this community and how we can be an asset and help and work with the district.
I think Cohia speaks to, Carlos started with 79 kids and he's at 1,000 and he has a 99% graduation rate. And we're not open, so we can't show you that, but I know when I went to Cohia, I would have succeeded with that model. And at the end of the day, someone has to start the conversation, someone has to take the chance. We're pretty educated and know what this community needs. I don't know where else to go with that.
And you also heard that we're not married to these pathways. Cohia began with a firefighting and a criminal justice program. And by working with our community in Hialeah and understanding the needs of that community and working with local partners like hospitals, working with the mass communications department and partnering up with Telemundo and other television networks, we identified other academies that can help students transition not only to post-secondary education, but like to the workforce right upon completion of high school. So what was presented to the board in our application, just again for the record, that's not what we're married to. I think the board understands this. Your voices matter. The community's voices matter. What we're presenting to you is a model, and what we're presenting to you is a school, really what Civica will be your community school. Will be an extension of your district, and again, will be a great partner for years to come.
So two things real quick, and then we can move on to other questions. First of all, just for the record, I don't think anybody is doubting the success of Covida. That is a very clear, very successful model of what you have built in Hialeah. So kudos to you. That is nobody questions that. Another comment I would make is you guys are not the only voices in the community. And clearly you know people, you've had lots of conversations around a need for a school like this, but I have personally heard from folks on the other side. So I just want to make it clear, these are not the only folks in the community, these are not the only ones that understand the need in the community. So just want to make that very clear up front. I think Director Hall has some questions.
I just have a comment, and I'll agree with Ms. Potberg when she says it could be a huge asset to our community. I don't think anyone's denying that either. What no one's talking about is, unfortunately, our district has a large population of at-risk students. We have a lot of students on free and reduced lunches. We have a lot of students on free breakfast that if they didn't come to school, they might not have food to eat. You guys, I want to know how you, I guess it's multi-question, how are you going to provide food for them? And B, how are you outreaching to them? They may not have Facebook or internet at home. And then, I guess just how are you outreaching to them? How do they know about the option of Civica? Because if it wasn't for Facebook, I would not have known about it before I was on the board.
Yeah, so we started, there's a, that question is asked in both the original application as well as in the, I think parts of that were asked in the DAC response, and we answered that in the response letter too. But we had made billboards. We put billboards up. We made yard signs. We put yard signs up. Facebook is a tremendous motivator of the community, judging from the responses that we get. We've held community events at there's a list of them in your application. You can do all of the community events over the summer, I think.
We've had barbecues at Parish Park. We put on a huge sports camps with the kids. We live in these communities. We interact in these communities. We've had community meetings. We've done,
I think 12 or 15 community meetings now, both in Milliken and in Johnstown. So
were they advertised other than on Facebook or other than in English even?
oh gosh, the
Yeah,
kids
we
went
hung,
around and hand out
banners.
flyers. We had things posted everywhere.
Stickers to all the window fronts in Johnstown.
Oh, that was you.
And we want you to know too, like, full tummies are so important to us. Like, we have had so many conversations. At the end of the day, we have to keep the doors open. If we can't provide food service year one, we have a goal of providing it. But you know, we're also the ones that provide the free lunches in the park in the summertime, Stephanie. It is something we want to address, and we hope to work with the food banks and the local community. I always address basic needs before I deal with the kiddo, so I want you to know that full tummies are important to us too. Keeping our doors open is really important also.
So what happens to those at-risk students that want to come to your school but can't get lunches? Because I work at the food bank here in Milliken. I see them 4 times a month. I know what they go through.
So we have in the budget allocated a food pantry. So again, given the depth of exploration we could have with the district, we asked specifically about how to provide hot lunches, a range of, I'm reading the emails, an exploration of costs is our intent. We hope to have around 100 kids, but that number might vary. A range of costs would be helpful given the variables that Ms. Arnold described and others that I'm sure you may come up with. And Ms. Arnold said, well, we'll do an exploration of costs at the meeting, and she would work with Sodexo, the food service provider. I don't believe that ever happened, and we weren't allowed to have a conversation at the meeting. So in lieu of that, we put together in our budget, as best we could, a food pantry. We budgeted for the food pantry on a per pupil basis, And we will feed the kids through that or other methods. There's lots of grants available for that as well. But without the opportunity to work with the district and explore hot lunches, that really limits us to a food pantry situation.
And I'm not speaking as a board member, speaking as someone who's at a food pantry here in town 4 times a month. We've never been approached by Civica for help or an idea to help. And we have provided lunches to the schools in the summer for the kids who don't eat in Milligan.
Well, thank you, we'll definitely check.
So I know there's that need here. And I just don't want those kids excluded from being able to go to school and have their food.
Just remember the reason we're doing this, we love kids, we love full tummies, like, keep that in mind. That when we're in the application process, a lot of it is the rubric, and those are things that we will further explore before we open. But we just have to know what we're coming from, we can only do what we can do to keep those open, so full tummies are just as important to us, we'll stay on that.
Can you explain to me how the food pantry actually works? I mean, on a day-to-day basis, how does it work? Because I don't understand how that.
So at my kids' charter school, the one that I was involved with for a long time, we have a food pantry that we stock regularly that has peanut butter and jelly, non-allergen meals that we can serve. We have pre-prepared, pre-packaged meals so that it happens when a kid comes to school and doesn't have his lunch for whatever reason, we make sure that they get lunch. The school folks can tell you about exactly how they segregate all the food for allergens and so forth, but we make sure that kids that show up without lunch get lunch.
Okay.
And the idea behind this school is because we don't offer hot lunch, it's we ask kids to bring the food, and so probably there's going to be kids that don't bring their food, and so that's how that pantry works.
Okay.
So just a note on that. I have a little bit of a reaction to it. And I have a reaction to it because there's a justice issue present in what you just described.
Okay.
Because one of the things that now we are separating out kids. We're separating out kids that need the food pantry and kids that don't need the food pantry. And that's the problem with addressing things in that way. One of the things that the free and reduced program and the way that that we strive to do is you don't know. You don't know if that person's just buying lunch, you don't know if they're getting a free lunch. You don't know, right? Because we want everybody to have equity of access to our schools, and we want everybody to be treated equally as possible. The second, your solution is you have to go to the special place to get the services that, that there is, it's not it may not be the biggest deal for everybody, but I do think, we live in a world of stigmatization, where stigmatization is rampant. And so I had a bit of a reaction when I read that in your proposal, because I'm like, well, great, now we've separated out our kids, and we've asked kids to take on, to demonstrate them. And I think I'm a little challenged by that. I'm going to say that. I also think the problem we're having right now is we're trading stories, right? We're trading. I know this community. I know this community. I've heard this. I've heard that. It's because we're dealing with stories with no data. There are no end of stories. I don't have data. I don't have a demographic study of the area that talks anything about the population here. I don't have, like Nate said, I don't have a survey of parents of children, in preschool who through 4th grade who would be your eventual clients about their interest level in what you're doing. That's not just people within your social network, but is representative of the community as a whole. Again, is there a small group of underserved people? Is it smaller people who are just disaffected with the school system? Or is it the tip of the iceberg? I don't know. I don't believe that you know, because I don't think anybody knows at that point if it's the case. So then it's a question of risk tolerance. How much risk am I asking the taxpayers, not just me, but the taxpayers that I represent, to say, you know what, some of that hard-earned money that you pay into the kitty, we should do it on here. We should invest in this. For me, I need not only to be able to tell good stories, I need to back that up with facts and data. One thing to live by, no data, no data without stories, no stories without data.
We are talking about the 500-page application, not only the 150 further response questions from the DAC. We feel like we've provided you with everything that you're asking. Our application is very intense,
I think the, in charter schools, and I've seen quite a few applications, Trevor has seen dozens and dozens of them. I'm not aware that we have community-wide surveys where we ask more than 2 years in advance, what would your kid be doing in 2 years? We have a hard time with more than 18 months out with getting people to sign a letter of intent. Because they're like, well, so my kid would be in what grade? If they're in, second grade now, that means they would be starting fifth or fourth. So it's very hard to get people like engaged in the process at that point. And then so what you're saying is that we don't have an accurate measure on what the community or the parents need. And what we're saying is, no, sir, we don't have a survey from K through 4 parents about what their interest would be in a charter school. We built a case based on what this district has argued for itself that it needs, which is a new school. And then we based it on the employment demographics that say that there's a huge dearth in these industries that we put our focus on for the career academies. So you saying that it's not data-based, I would argue that the application set is heavily data-based on those things that you're asking. It's just not the answers that you would prefer. And I think you prefer more detailed personal answers, and that's just not what we have.
Can Stephanie add something as well? Go ahead.
Just said, just a couple more data points. The 600 kids that are choicing out of our district, and to that piece, are we going to bring those 600 kids back tomorrow, next year if the school opens? No, we probably aren't, because they're probably established where they are. But future years, are we looking to lighten that number or bring that number down? That's the goal. So 600 kids that are leaving our district looking for other options. Whatever those options are, and they're all over the board from elementary up to high school and for numerous different reasons. And unfortunately, the district nor the state have the data on that, who those kids are and why they're choicing out. And then also, too, the other data point is over 400 kids on KQA's wait list, waiting to get into a charter school that isn't growing because they're capped out at the 410 because of the agreement that they made with the district. So those are 2 data points I wanted to add to Craig's.
All right, I'm going to shift back to some employee and HR stuff. Unless anybody, I shouldn't even give you guys that option. So on page 66 of the application, we talk about salaries. And 66 and 67, on 67, you state that there's really not a salary schedule or salary lanes or any artifact of traditional teacher salary models. And you list here, state below are the anticipated staffing positions, including the starting salary of each position. And we'll just take the second bullet point, for example, is a core teacher at $45,000 a year. On page 84, you come back and say that as part of a plan to attract quality teachers into the district, you want to have a starting salary higher than what the district current has, but you have this 45,000 now listed as an average. And so I'm a little confused on, are all teachers going to start at the same level, or is that a first year teacher's starting salary is the 45,000?
Well, it's up to the board and administrator eventually to decide what she's going to pay the individual teachers. But a person that walks in with a tremendous amount of experience, that would be a gem to have. We have the flexibility to pay that person more. What we're saying is that our basement, our floor, has got to not be lower than your floor. We want to attract the same teachers you attract.
And all I'm asking for is clarification, because it doesn't say that. It just says this is the salary for each position. And so that was my question: is if you have a Robin Denman who walks into your building, is she
200 grand?
Is she going to be paid the same amount as a probationary teacher straight out of college? Right. So there is to some degree okay, you will honor your service. Okay. Now I want to jump back, and real quick, before I forget, before you walk out, because I was going to thank you. Thank you for
I'm not
clarifying in
sure.
your presentation, the certification and training
Oh, okay.
piece of that, because that was a question I think a lot of us had.
You're welcome.
You can go ahead. I may need to call recess here myself. So, and you probably can't pull this slide up because it'll be a technological nightmare to do this, but you guys showed this, the intense, I guess, to date, is that 280 students, is that right, intent to enroll?
K-12.
K-12.
Yes. 122 in the grades we would open with.
So
6-9.
So 122 on year one, essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
And our goal is 135.
Okay. So the additional 280 might be, I have a first grader, and we're saying, yeah, when we come to sixth grade, well, okay.
Yes.
That was what I thought, but I wanted to make sure I fully understood that. And then, so there was a little, I had a difficult time trying to discover this in the application. Will those intents need to be filed each year? Or once a student, you're always a student?
Yeah, you just have to fill out the form that you're coming back, just like we do in the regular schools.
Okay.
And siblings are allowed in, and then we would open back up.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're in the school once they're in the school. I know there was a form that was mentioned in the application, that's all it was, just the same as the regular schools. I intend to come back next year.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
not the full.
Not an intent to enroll, I
Okay.
intend to come back.
That went a lot quicker than I thought it was going to.
I have,
Go ahead.
I have a question on your disciplinary actions. You, of course, refer to your honor code a lot. It's a little vague, but one thing I really had a question on, or not, maybe, it's a question, but it's also an area for improvement. Again, I've worked as a manager, so I know employees, and I know kids find loopholes in everything you give them. So in your suspension and expulsion category, you state a written appeal must be submitted in 10 days. Are those 10 days actual days from date to days, tomorrow's day 1 through 10? Are they, are the holiday and weekends included? Are they school days?
Calendar days.
They're calendar days. So what happens if a student is going to be expelled and it's Friday of Christmas break? Those 10 calendar days happen over Christmas break?
Yeah, in practice, we usually like a break does not count against any holiday. We do use 10 calendar days as far as, but breaks would not count against the 10. So if school is out, like the principal's not there, that's not a day.
I would just
Yeah, I would clarify, I can see how you say that.
That you would clarify. I run into instances myself personally where a student does something on the last day of school and there's no punishment.
Yeah, we've experienced that.
So that might just be something.
And when we talk about the honor code, it's just a guide for conversation. Like when we talk about that with discipline, like we're trying to learn from our behaviors. Discipline is discipline. If you do an offense, you face the consequence. Just when we have the conversations as teachers, as administrators with the student, we're trying to learn and improve, and everything we do within our building revolves around our honor code. So it's just a guide for conversation.
And then I know you had talked about having the kids, for punishment, maybe stay after school and help clean the school. What happens to the kid who's there every day scrubbing toilets after school and just can't get it together? At what point does it kind of become child labor versus discipline?
And another thing I want to thank you for, thanks for preserving the battery, man. You're doing the.
He's really
If you hadn't been doing that, we've gotten to like 5 packs of batteries.
So part of Sheena's principal leadership program will encompass the comprehensive discipline plan and how we'll have different matrices that will be established and teaching Sheena how there'll be different levels of discipline. Our students are not going to be just subject to scrubbing floors. We believe in restorative justice, and we believe in teaching, after an incident may occur. So there will be a variety of different matrices that the principal will be taught within the comprehensive discipline plan. Again, that's part of the principal leadership program. That's one of the elements of the principal leadership program that will encompass the comprehensive plan, where you'll see a variety of different concepts consequences to address the incident. I mean, comprehensive is long, but if I can tell you, one of the programs that we're using is called Tough Skills, TUF. And I encourage the district to look into it as well. It's a virtual program where you assign different modules to students based on what incidents and what offenses they've done. And it's there's professional athletes in there that are part of the modules. So part of the comprehensive discipline plan will be for them to complete the modules to address the incident that may occur. In addition to, again, a variety of different things within the matrix of that comprehensive discipline. But again, that's part of her principal leadership training, and she'll be taught that. And then we'll be providing the support, ongoing support, and follow-up to make sure she understands and it's implemented with fidelity at the school.
I think kind of the point behind that too is just, if a student, throws a chair through or whatever, we have the option, or spray paints a wall. We have the option to say, well, you're gonna spend some time removing the paint from the wall. It doesn't mean a child who's a disruption in class is going to be scrubbing toilets by any means. I think it's okay you ripped up the book, you could spend a little bit of time taping the book. I don't think it's wrong with saying that.
Right, and there's an element of restitution within the comprehensive discipline plan as well.
That's where, when my mind goes to that, that's fine. Like, there's natural consequences. You sat and you ripped up the grass, I don't know, let's find a way to fix the thing. I don't think it meant you spray paint a wall, you scrub a toilet. You spray paint a wall, you help remove the spray paint on the wall. So I don't know, I just hope that makes sense to you. And we don't always go to that.
Within the matrix, there'll be different magnitudes of different infractions. And based on the severity of those infractions, there'll be flexibility within the options of what the consequences will be. And then that's what she has to be taught, so she understands, okay, for an infraction for this matrix of a level 3, and these are level 3 categories of infraction, these are the consequences you're looking at. But then you also have progressive discipline, so for your first infraction, depending on the magnitude, it'll be this consequence, but if it's a reoccurring infraction, then the consequence may be a little bit more severe than the prior.
And I hope you're aware too, if a child's having that many struggles, it would have already happened in MTSS. As a whole team, we would have already been doing intervention and trying to help this child to have a solution to that. We're not ever going for a child that's continually coming to the principal's office. Just so you know that in my mind, that child's just not going to continually come to the principal's office. As a team and as a school, we'll be implementing a process to do interventions to help that child succeed in the classroom. The goal is to succeed. The goal is to continually do that. So
an application is just kind of vague. You just refer back to the honor codes.
Absolutely.
So, sometimes I think we get too politically correct, so I have to ask this question anyway. I'm not opposed to the discipline plan that you're proposing. I guess I get a little squirmish when we start talking about students who may have either a physical disability or an emotional disability that may preclude them from being able to do those types of, is that what I want to say? Participate in those types of punishment, but and so I guess then it becomes this, geez, am I actually going to use this term, equity in punishment? How do we ensure equity in punishment when we're dealing with children who
the behavior could manifest from a disability?
Not necessarily that, but that their abilities aren't going to allow them to participate in the punishment like another child might be able to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
It's 10 o'clock.
Sorry. We have systems in place
We have systems in place, for example, with students with disabilities, we look at developing FAB or BID, which is a functional assessment of behavior or behavior intervention plan, to address the infraction. And yeah, if again, if it's a student with disability, we have to look at, each student with each disability has their very own IEP, individual education plan, and to address what their needs. And it's our responsibility as educators Sheena as the principal, along with her support staff, to make sure that if it's a child that has disciplinary issues and does have an IEP, to make sure that that we are considering the IEP, and again, that to make sure that those accommodations are being made, and if the development of a FAB or a BIB has to be in place, then those will be the steps as well.
I think the fact that I have 19 years of experience in special education will also help with that process too.
Go ahead, Ms. Walsh.
Just adding on to the students that may have different disabilities, how are you planning for any handicapped children who are going to be in wheelchairs? I know the sports barn is it's a one level, one story, but I know that part of that building is not going to be available to those children. And with your, I guess your permanent building is.
That would be required, I'm assuming, during the zoning process, which would.
I don't think any part of what we would be renting would be.
It's not accessible.
Would not be accessible. The only part I'm thinking more like the gymnastics areas, that would be not part of the, yeah, it's not part of. But definitely something we would make sure is accessible or something like that. I can't think of a spot right now that is that way.
But if they're on an IEP in a wheelchair and their IEP requires transportation, how will that be handled?
We had to have that budgeted.
Budgeted under consultants, or that, special education services.
So
In
is
one of
it
the past
under
emails.
consultants or under special education? Because the consultants I thought was when the nurse would come in to help teach the health science.
So the consultants, maybe it's not well termed in the budget, but the consultant line item is a pass-through for all of the special education money that comes into the school. So if we have 15 special ed kids, we get X amount of dollars for those from the federal titles. If we have 2, we get that much. And so that money passes through directly into the consultant services line. So that those kids that have IEP services would be funded out of that with the funds that come from title. And then we also have a special education coordinator that we fund from the budget as well. So things like contracting for a school psychologist, or making accommodations for an IEP or 504, that kind of stuff is in the line item. Generally, we don't have lined out exactly how each fund is going to be spent because we don't know. But the types of funds that you're discussing, like special education transportation, would come out of that fund.
Did you have a?
Sorry. Because my guess is it may come up later, and when the board goes into, when we have our public conversation that we eventually have to have about all this. One other concern that I have that I don't know is addressable, because I don't have anything to address it with, is I do believe in certain places, in certain ways, and I've heard this repeated by several members of the Civica team, that kids are kids. Kids are kids. Kids are kids. I agree with that. I also believe in demographics. And I do wonder, and I do have some concern about a model for school that is currently embedded in a specific demographic, very urban, just very different than where we are. And I know one of the things this has been represented to us as, this Civica Colorado would be joining the Civica network. Well, right now there's only one school, correct? Correct, there's Cohia. So we would be creating the network as part of this. So there's no experience currently to point to that says that this model replicates, or that the model replicates in such a different demographic environment. It could, but we don't know. So my consideration is, I don't give you a second, Carlos, I know you want to, is what level of risk am I going to ask the taxpayers and parents and the school district to take on for this project?
100% all the risk. And if you look at our application, if you can make the correlation, our demographics, we strategically planned the model that they reached out to us. Our demographics are very similar to the demographics here. Our free and reduced lunch percentage is 89%. So if you look at, and again, I know it's been a long night, but if you look at our chart and you compare it to your district, you'll see that there's very similarities. At the end of the day, the risk of the taxpayers, that's your call. That's your decision. You've heard, Mr. Scott, you've mentioned a lot of what we don't have, but you haven't mentioned much of what we do have in that 130-page application. So when you begin to deliberate, from one professional to the other, because I'm an elected official as well, and I sit on the council for the town of Miami Lakes in my community. When you deliberate, we have open discussions, we look at everything. We look at what we do have, and we look at what we don't have. And at the end of the day, that's going to be your decision. We'll respect the decision of the board. And if you have enough of what you see enough that merits for this application to be recommended to be approved by the school board, then so be it. And if it's not, then that'll be a decision, but that'll take place during your deliberation.
And you're right, all we can do is say, let us prove it to you. You're absolutely right about that.
I get it, there is.
It is, and I appreciate that this process is not fun. And we do kind of have to focus on the deficiencies. There's a lot I like. I will confess. I don't really honestly have an opinion about charter schools per se. Like I said, not part of my experience. This is new to me. I do like the entrepreneurial aspect of it, but I don't know that we want to be here till 2 o'clock in the morning and me telling you everything I do like about it. So the most productive conversations have a problem with the problems. And again, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Where's the bar?
Well, and just
good?
like the public speaker, it said sometimes you have to take a chance. Something like you believe in, and that's ultimately your decision. So you're right. That was proven to you.
I do want the board to understand. I know this is just verbal what I'm saying, but for the record, I do want the board to know that I do pledge my full support and that of our team in Florida to Civica Colorado. We will be with you thick and thin. We will see you throughout this. There will be challenges, there will be issues that we have to resolve, and there will be things that we'll be celebrating. But again, and I mentioned it earlier, we seek to be a great partner with your district. And we seek to, even there's some things that weren't communicated prior to the application, as Director Sassano mentioned. But we plan to be transparent and clear with our school board and again, and communicate effectively. And I pledge from the Civica Network standpoint that we will provide ongoing and full support to Civica Colorado, not only in its infancy stage, but once it's a well-established school as well.
So one last comment, and I swear I'm done. For now. And one thing I would say, and I say for, everybody in this later, again, none of this is personal. It's not about individuals. It's just about, and we come at it, we love our kids. We do. We're talking about a place where parents will, in good faith, entrust their children for a good bit of the day, right? A place that we will entrust a great deal of taxpayer dollars, and a place where we're going to trust that all that's going to be done to the maximally. There is risk. There's always risk. There's risk in our existing schools. There is risk in doing something new, not opposed to risk. The question is how much. And while this process has been not fun, it's not been fun for me. Again, sworn in 2 days or a week ago, hasn't been fun for the DAC. But it also, we owe it to our kids to do all the work that we can, be as thorough as we can. So, and to make sure that we've done all the due diligence we can, because they don't deserve anything less.
And everything you just said is the same thing that we would say.
We're with you, Director Scott.
Well, I'm kind of shocked and surprised that people aren't having fun. So much fun that I've kind of let some questions go by without me jumping in because I had some similar questions. I'm going to go through a line of questioning and it's going to be kind of all over the place just because I'm trying to catch back up. One of the waivers that you asked for was on policy GBEB. I don't know why we in the education world use letters instead of numbers, but so GBEB. This is a policy on staff conduct, and specifically one of the issues in that is a clause on the possession of deadly weapons in possession of a staff member. Now the way the district's policy is written is that we can allow a deadly weapon to be held by a staff member who is essentially required to carry that. But you guys are asking to waive that policy in its entirety, so essentially a staff member, any staff member, based on that waiver, could carry a deadly weapon and not be in violation of your policies. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
We asked to waive GBEVA, staff dress code. We haven't asked to waive that.
Discussion hasn't even been had with our board.
All right, so we're having fun, right?
Yeah.
My apologies.
Dress code's a little different.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, the auditing firm. So the district has a long-term relationship with the auditing firm we use. KQA uses that firm as well. What was the choice? And I imagine our
Yeah, the board has actually chosen an auditing firm. I didn't actually know who audited the district until the day of the thing. That was the first time. No one was opposed to using the same auditing firm.
We just
per
haven't
se.
chosen an auditing firm.
So let me just ask you that question. Would you be
Opposed to it? No, I don't think so. My process is the process I usually see board states for late days
That's
and
our
stuff,
board
but
decision.
that's a board decision, not even mine.
Yeah,
right?
that's our board decision.
What was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the point was just saying that we will have a private auditor outside of Academica. And we haven't gone any further than that.
Why they have one.
Yeah, that we're open to that.
So I do this. I do this digital thing for like 3 months, and I have everything nice and organized. And I decide, no, I need it right, and I have to flip it all. So administrator development. There was a lot of exciting things that Carlos, you shared. The Doral Leadership Institute. So that's a 1-year program. Talk to me a little bit more about how that works. Is that because here's where I'm coming from with this. I know you have a lot of stuff going on, some on-site work, the Doral Leadership Institute, and I have some concerns that what this timeline looks like. Is this a 1-year thing? Is this a 2-year? Is this a 3-year thing? Obviously, there will be some ongoing professional development, but it just seems like the administrator is going to have a very full plate if we're not careful.
But you're asking about the DLI, the Doral Leadership Institute program right now?
Well, that specifically, since that's a 1-year program, what is the time commitment on, I guess it would be Ms. McCow, it would be, what would the time commitment look like for her in that 1 year?
So our Doral Leadership Institute program that we've developed both in Florida, Texas, and in the state of Nevada, the modules work around the flexibility to give the principals and aspiring assistant principal or aspiring principals flexibility and not take them too much out of their location. So some of their modules will take place over the summer when school is at recess. The principal's still working. The principal never stops working.
Right. I wish I could convince
Right.
people to think about that.
Right. It's a 12-month, 365-day job. So there'll be some modules that will be, for example, there's some modules that will be from 8 to 3, where it would require the principal to be off campus. And there are some modules also that we do from 12 to 6. So they'll come in half a day, and then they'll partake in the modules from 12 to 6. And then there's some modules as well. We have 2 out of the 7 modules that take place over the summer. So you're looking at a fall term, if you will, a spring term, and a summer term, kind of like how you see it at the community college with the semesters.
I think it's important to note too, like this is above and beyond. I already have my master's in education leadership and my principal license, and I've had 19 years in education. I've been an on-site principal at Explosion School in California. Like, we chose to disclose that. That's a board decision, but this is really above and beyond. Like, and we're into credentialed principals and credentialed teachers. We have the flexibility for our CTE pathways, but I just think that at the end of the day, that's just above and beyond what I already hold. So I know we don't talk about it because we don't.
Right, and and the other part of the principal support, like you mentioned, will be the continuous on-site. So I had a conversation with Sheena today and what the plan's gonna look like, and so for the fall of the beginning, so you'll have the summer. So we're gonna be working with Sheena on identifying the week that the teachers report back to school. What will the professional development look like that week? What are the breakout sessions gonna hold? What is the information that we're gonna disseminate to our teachers? And again, we'll be working with her, and we'll immerse ourselves on some of the policies, the pupil progression plan, school safety, some of the things that have been adopted by the school board already, where we would have to then pass that information down to our teachers. So we'd be working with her over the summer, the entire summer, in different phases leading up to the opening of schools, and then for on-site, we'll be there every month. And again, it's not just me, but it will be some months, but there'll be an ongoing on-site support for the entire fall. Based on where we are, when we go into winter recess, we'll determine if we have to go there once every 2 months, or we have to continue just being there on a monthly basis for the year one. And I'm sorry, and I mentioned a few. Amanda didn't let me add all the bullets that I wanted to the PowerPoint, but those are just a few of the professional development opportunities that we'll be providing the principal and support with within the network.
Okay. Can I follow up on that for you? Sure. I promise you. You mentioned that the part of the professional development could include having the principal be off-site for some of that training. Did I hear that correctly?
Of residency.
For the Doral Leadership Institute?
Is that during school time, or is that before?
The seven modules, so the way that the program is implemented, it's 7 modules in 1 year, of which 2 are over the summer. So throughout the academic year, there'll be 5 different modules that the principal will participate. If by any chance it becomes challenging, then also through the DLI program, just like as Stephanie called in, because now with technology and being able to be anywhere virtually, she would have the flexibility also to call in, and also the presentations will be made available to her through our Doral Leadership Institute Dropbox.
So I guess my question is, and maybe it may not be pertinent, but if you need to be off-site for training, is there someone at the school being an administrator? Is there an assistant principal or a vice principal or a head teacher or something like that? Yeah.
We're gonna work really hard to make sure I'm not off-site, like our residency would happen in year 0, so. Yes, there would be a designee.
Okay, thank you.
And eventually an assistant.
Sure.
That's in the application.
So my next question is will be around the facility. I mean, it has been a little confusing, because we did get an application that said one thing, and we were told to ignore some pieces of that, and then we got some new information tonight. And so there's a lot of questions, I guess, around the facility stuff. The plan at the sports barn is a build out of 8 classrooms. How soon is that going to be carried out, and how will you be financing that?
It would begin, I mean, I don't have an exact timeline, so I'm not going to.
Sweet on approval, probably?
Yeah, approval's the main thing right there. We're not going to do that before approval. And then, like I said, we have multiple people who are interested in financing something like that, that we can roll into something with. Obviously, our long-term goal is with partnership with Boys and Girls Club and to the build-out of library complexes or whatever that we would finance it with some of the partners that we worked with in the past with academic building.
Now, knowing that you're going to be building something like that, I mean, is that then going to be? Is there a long-term plan to continue to use that facility? I mean, that seems like a pretty large investment to make for temporary.
So they have 2 spaces already. So we're going to have 8 spaces total. They have 2. Stephanie and Jenna want to build 2 additional spaces for their future use. So that would be 4 permanent structured rooms there, and then we will build 4 additional rooms with temporary solutions. So accordion walls, not permanent sticks in the ground, so that can come up after. So they will have the benefit of the 2 extra classrooms that are built, and the other 4 that we build will come down and then turn back into kitchen.
And then, permanent facility at the Milliken location. I mean, kind of, I mean, what are you estimating that the start date on construction with that, and how long of a build out are you looking at, or, I know you guys had some grant money that you were able to do some preliminary drawings, work with some architects. I mean, what are they telling you? What are you guys looking at for timeline?
Go ahead.
You want, you speaking? Oh, okay. Timeline wise, so if we get approval, obviously we're gonna, year 1, we will start, a lot of preliminary things almost immediately. We could probably do the building in less than a year. Yeah. But a lot of that work would begin really at the same time, because we would be building those plans, working with Boys and Girls Club, and there's a lot of people obviously involved, so that would almost begin immediately upon approval.
Trevor, how many buildings have you built for that, and you know?
I have been involved in building probably roughly 30 to 40 schools.
So your timelines, when you talk about start immediately and build in a year, is that your experience?
It is. It is.
You built 30 schools?
Yeah.
And so, as far as, let's go back to some of the financing on the construction of that facility. Are you guys looking at, I mean, are you looking at COPs? Are you looking at just going with some sort of operating loan or line of credit?
Most of the time, I'll speak to the most common ones that we've used. The Turner Agency Group is one group that we work with, or something. There's others that we use, but that's just maybe a more popular one. They are the developer and build it, and then in that agreement that has a set fee schedule, there's a option period where you have the option to buy it. I've currently started working on another one right now, where you go to, like DA Davidson, you go to the bond market. We've also built 2 schools recently where we went straight to the bond market, where we've had big investors willing to finance it right from the beginning. I won't say it's a large community of people who buy charter school bonds, but they're very large institutions that do it, and we've had 2 separate ones recently who have wanted to finance the whole building. And if we would run analysis, bring that to the board, and I don't know which one's the right one at this point, because we haven't gotten specific proposals on that, but we would look at all those situations and bring those. But those are probably the 2 most likely scenarios where we bring in a developer type group who would finance it for us, and we'd have a buyout option, or we would go directly to the bond market if that made sense, and do the tax exempt bonds with somebody like D.A. Davidson. We work with another underwriter too, but we usually work with both. And so both options are definitely things that we're open to all things.
What do the terms on the buyouts usually look like? I mean, in your
typical could be anywhere with 3 to 5 years. They're not super long. They're usually about giving the school a chance to build up equity. We usually defer rent in those situations. So let's just say a full rent payment was $300,000. We'll stair step that, because obviously you're not going to open up the building completely full. So they stair step that, defer the rent, and that's all on the back end when you buy them out. But that allows the schools to build some cash positions and stuff like that. But that's typically what they look like. And then we've been going to the market lately about, I think my last bond was just under, I want to say 4.8, 4.7. For non-rated, because charter school bonds being non-rated, a rating is very, very difficult.
Right.
And brand new schools definitely not getting rated.
Right. And is that, and those typically 20 years?
30. 25 to 30.
Okay.
And we usually have call options in there for about 8 to 10 if you guys are interested in stuff like that too.
Okay.
President. Sorry, I said it wrong. It's President Well.
Well, call me and people wait for dinner. I'm on that, so.
I just want to clarify, when you say we have the opportunity for the buyout,
The school.
The school does.
The school, not yet. I'm sorry. I'm speaking on the school. Academic, I do not own any building. I should make that very clear. We're not the landlord. When I speak we represent the school.
Right. And I assume the charter school buying the building would still involve some sort of taking out some sort of debt, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
they're not
it's-
gonna write a check for $20 million.
No, it's,
in
if
5
you go to
years.
the bond, think of a bond as essentially getting a mortgage.
Right.
Essentially, that's what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you're taking on debt, with covenants and different things like that. Yeah, essentially you're getting a mortgage to buy the building.
Okay, and if something happens to the school, who becomes the inheritors of that debt?
It can depend, it really can. I'm not gonna say that it can be the state, it can be that they repossess the building and no one does and they sell it. This scenario, probably not that case because there's gonna be a land lease and some different restrictions on that because we're working with the Boys and Girls Club, so.
Right.
I don't know the exact setup of that. It would be dependent upon a lot of things,
But this would be taken into account, and especially with the agreement with the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
The eventualities of, that things don't work out.
yeah, and we would build and we would work with their outside councils or inside of whatever they have. And we have a history of working with Boys and Girls Clubs, with situations kind of similar to this. We're actually building a school with the Boys and Girls Club in Reno right now, where they're, building a 3-story that's on their site. It's very similar to this. It's a little bit smaller, but, so this is not, it's not new. We're just having reached that point. It's more under the construction phase. We haven't really opened that building yet, it's in January. Yeah.
And so real quick, is Director Hall had a question, I believe, on Boys and Girls Club, but then I want to come back to the buildings.
You guys keep talking about the Boys and Girls Club being in partnership with them, and then the Boys and Girls Club said that they would only build out if Civic is approved. But on November 13th, Mr. Horton, you said that you're only in talks with the Boys and Girls Club. So do you guys like have a signed agreement contingent upon this approval with them?
No, that's been brought up a couple of times. Thank you for asking that question. This idea of that we should have a bunch of contingent contracts or agreements in place prior to the approval of the charter. And Ms. Arnold has indicated that's her experience with another charter school. That's not my experience in charter schools. I've been doing it for a little while, and that when we talk to folks like Hall Irwin and Boys and Girls Club and TRPR and the sports barn, without having a charter in place, there's so many things that we don't know that we could put into a contingent lease or a contingent contract. And that's especially true when you talk about very large purchases like building and land. So no, without a charter, none of that stuff can be negotiated through. You can get things like comfort letters, which we got from D.A. Davidson, and we got that from the sports bar. But there's so many components of a contract that would have to be figured out because of the contract with the charter and the board that it's impossible as far as I know. So no, we don't have a contract contingent with the Boys and Girls Club on the charter approval. There's just way too many variables for that. But we have agreed that we're working together. We have a structure in place. We have the structure for the 2 facilities in mind. We have a model in Loveland, the Loveland New Vision Charter School and the Larimer County Boys and Girls Club have co-adjacent properties. And that system works out great for them. So we're looking to that as the sort of model. This one is a little bit different because the land underneath is donated to the Boys and Girls Club. So we'll be long-term leasing from them underneath. But none of that could be worked out without a charter. So yes, we have as many conversations as you've heard. You have our commitment to move forward on that. You've heard the Boys and Girls Club clear commitment to move forward on that. But I don't know of a mechanism that we can contract.
They provided a community partner.
Yeah, we have letters of support. We've heard them acknowledge it, but that's essentially.
But then I want to make sure I understood it correctly. So the land the school's going to be built on is owned by was donated to the Boys and Girls Club, so it will not be the school's land.
Would
it's
be
the Boys and Girls Club.
Right. So the whole thing is like this big conglomeration of decisions and ideas. Brett Hall, for tax advantages on his side, would donate the land to the Boys and Girls Club, not to the charter school. The Boys and Girls Club would lease land back to us, long-term, low rent lease, and then we would build our building on top of that. The Boys and Girls Club then builds their building.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
I have another question.
absolutely.
Sorry, I think that you clarified everything for me, but I felt like Brett Hall's letter of support was not very firm, that he was a little
Right.
wavering on that. Are you
No,
definite about his?
Yes, ma'am, thank you for asking. I talked to the Hall Corporation even this week about it, and they said, yes, we can't make firm commitments. Because I said, hey, could we have a little bit more to show tonight? And they said, no, we just can't do that. There's so many pieces to that puzzle. For instance, we have to lease deed land back to TRPR. All of the land for the natural area stuff around that is TRPR's land. So then a portion of the land goes to them, the rest of it goes to the Boys and Girls Club. We have to vacate all of the plots that are already platted in that area, so that all has to be vacated. So Mr. Hall is absolutely committed to this project, and so are the Boys and Girls Club. The charter school has to happen first. You heard that today from the Boys and Girls Club. And then once the school happens, Mr. Hall will go forward with vacating the land, and then we can go forward with attracting financing on a piece of land that we don't own. So it's a complicated scenario.
So who is responsible for grounds maintenance then, if you have that much conglomeration in there?
Well, so we'll lease the square, that is ours, and we have that built into our budget. The Boys and Girls Club will build a freestanding facility, and we'll have a breezeway that attaches it so the kids don't get cold. But Boys and Girls Clubs generally build in cash, so they don't finance. And so we'll have our property, we'll have a ring around it that we maintain. They'll build their property, they'll have the ring, we'll probably use the same company. And then the rest of it becomes, some of it's TRPR, some of it belongs to us, we'll mow our fields. And, so I'm sure all that'll be worked out, but we'll take care of what's ours.
All right, so I'm gonna come back to this again. Thank you for clarifying the donation on the mess that it is. I mean, it really is, and I can appreciate that. So in this new building, well, let me ask this question first, because so one of my biggest concerns is obviously the food service aspect of it. Looking in the application, just doing some really simple math, it would appear that you're trying to build a student body that would be comprised of about 40% of families who are economically challenged. And so when we start talking about that, the food piece really is a concern to me. Now I'm no expert in nutrition. My waistline will definitely attest to that. But I've spent time with the Kids Pack programs, some of the larger Kids Pack programs in the state through my work with Rotary, and I know that there's a high percentage of the kids who are on free and reduced lunch. That lunch is probably the only meal they're getting. And the scarcity of the meal being available for breakfast or dinner or even on the weekends, and that's why the Kids Pack programs are so prolific across the state. And so I guess my question is, did anybody on your team talk to Sodexo about what their requirements would be for food service?
No, and I don't want to continue to refer to the conversation we had, but our in to Sodexo was their current subscriptions, that currently subscribe to KQA. They provide meals to a charter school in this town. And the emails that we had, we talked about wanting to inquire about that the superintendent would make that arrangement, that she would reach out to Sodexo, and that we would talk about it at our meeting on August 7th, that we were not allowed to talk about that. And then Sodexo didn't come up after that. We didn't reach out personally to Sodexo. That would have been prudent for us to do.
And I think it's important for us to say too, like in the application process, we don't have to have transportation or food services. We will be pursuing that. We want food services, but for this process right here, we didn't have to provide transportation or food services. Lots of charter schools don't have them. We hope to continue to go down that path, but it just didn't have to be provided for this application process. We don't have to have transportation or we don't have to have food services. Yes, we will pursue it. When we build our facility, yes, we want a kitchen in our facility. So we will have it, it's just not something we had to present in this application.
Right, no, and I understand that it's not compulsory, but, so here's where I have a concern as, number one, as a human being, and then two, as a taxpayer in the district. Obviously, as a human being, I want to make sure that children are getting the meals they want. So here's where I have some struggles. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to sit down with a number of the individuals from Sodexo, at our local level, at the state level, at a regional level, and at a district level, and propose some questions to them on this. And one of the things that I'm trying to be cognizant of as a taxpayer and as a steward of taxpayers' money is that an idea like this comes forward and people get really excited about it, and they see opportunities for their children that, an avenue to succeed where they weren't previously succeeding in the regular school district. And they enroll their student, and they think they can figure out a way to make the food work, but there's no guarantee. So they think they can figure out a way to make it work. The problem is they get into November, they get into December, and it's not working for whatever reason. And without seeing, really, and I'm glad you guys did elaborate on this food pantry system. But if it doesn't work and the child needs to return back to the schools, that usually happens well after the count date. And after the count date means that the district has lost that PPR money, which puts a burden on the school district then to be able to provide the education services for that child. We're essentially providing free service without any money. And so that's where my concern with the food service comes in, is that, number one, I mean, I don't have the data, sorry, Reverend Scott, but I think we all know, anybody who's in the education world knows that children who are in free and reduced lunch are usually experiencing a food scarcity problem outside of school. And so that's important that we address that. But the second piece to that, of course, then is, my excitement is really high here, but then all of a sudden my hunger kicks in and says, I can't do this anymore. I have to go where I can get food. And that puts the district in a really compromised position, especially after the results of our recent election, because now we are already dipping into our reserves to try to cover some of our operating costs. And so that's where my question about this comes. So, all that being said, the plans for this new building, I know Sodexo will probably, if you choose to work with Sodexo, they're probably going to require you to have a facility in the building so that they can prepare the meals in there. Do your plans include a construction of a kitchen?
Yeah, the beauty of partnering with the Boys and Girls Club is most of their clubs have full kitchens, and our plan is to utilize their kitchens. We're renting space back from them through the day. The technology center, their classrooms, and certainly their gym and their kitchen for that purpose.
Okay.
Also, in another school district I work with, and maybe it's different in your school district, but the per pupil fund is calculated monthly. So if our count changes throughout the month, then that proportion of dollars changes hands as well. So if the kid goes back to your district, then the next month the
Not here.
Not here.
That's not here. There are places, no, but that's not here. No.
So naturally you could understand.
So our answers, we love the ideas. We hope to have creative answers year one, but food service definitely, is something in year two. But it is being considered. Everything you said are conversations that we've had and are gonna continue to pursue.
Well, actually, yeah, thank you, President Wells. I think that's just another kind of just one of those things, like how high is our risk tolerance is because of the, shall we say, unique way that Colorado goes about funding its schools. There is that thing, if a churn develops where, people are signed up and they're excited and they get, for whatever reasons, partway through and go, oh, not for us, they come back, we're obligated to serve them in all the ways that we can. It's our responsibility, legally, ethically, morally, all of that. But because of that weird uniqueness of, Colorado's budgeting cycle and how it all works, we do, that is something where kind of, that risk is just another risk we have to factor into all of this. We have, not only do people have to sign up and sign letters of intent and show up, but for our they kind of need to stay. And if they come back mid-year, or whatever, then if that becomes a pattern, that's a problem. Could bind us in some ways, and so that's again.
Charter schools run that same risk though, is also kids, kids move around, if you have an FEC, you're supposed to fill it, and they're not there count day. I mean, I think we both realized it. It makes it hard.
That's helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
but yeah, and not that we talked to them about this, so I don't want to put words in the Boys and Girls Club, but we work with the Boys and Girls Club, the one that I'm working with right now, where the National School Lunch Program is run with them at their kitchen in a very similar way. I think the school it's not community eligible, it's 90, it will be next year, it's 97%, so, high 90s. So it's not a unique situation that I have not worked with in the past, and I would hope that we can build some kind of partnership or with the kitchen like that here as well. But I understand that the year one definitely is more of a challenge.
And I do apologize. I keep repeating all this stuff because I had to learn it in the last couple of weeks. So I thought y'all would just enjoy my learnings. So about how all this works.
Any other questions?
I have another question. So your start date is planned for fall of 2020. What's plan B? If everything doesn't fall into place, or are you very certain that 2020 is your start date?
Well, if we're not approved, 2021. If we're approved, we're gonna get the school open by hook or crook, but we'll have every intention of opening the school here. That is Cohea's commitment, that is Academica's commitment, but it's all of us made that commitment because of Sheena and her group, it takes crazy parents to run a charter school. They're twice as crazy as you people. And they're putting their time in and they're committed 100%. And this district needs an option. It needs an outlet, an overflow out. It's getting tired.
Any other questions? Well, Mr. Horton, I think you hit the nail on the head down there. What you just said, I can't imagine doing what you guys are doing. It's hard enough doing this when we have the resources, we have the funding, we have the facilities, we have food service, we have the reserve funds. It's hard doing it with all of that in place, and so to not have that in place and to be scratching, I mean, it's I think even Carl has said it, you can't fake the passion. And you can, but you can't fake it this long to go through these things. If there's nothing else from the board, I'd ask you guys, do you have any closing statements or responses that you'd like to make to anything that was discussed here this evening?
We'd just like to thank you for your time. Obviously, we realize it's a late night, so time away from your families as well, so thank you.
We appreciate your interactions. It's great to us. It's really good to just have an open conversation about this.
Sheena, did we see your video that you first wanted us to see?
Yes.
That was the beginning of that, okay.
Sorry for the.
Yes, that was the
Seems like a
good
while
one,
ago.
and yes.
All right, well, seeing no more questions or discussion, I will close the public hearing. I did that right. Knock one up. I'll take a drink. So I'll go ahead and I'll make a motion that the WeldRE5J Board of Education go into executive session for the purpose of receiving legal advice on the proposed Civica Charter School application pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402, subsection 4, subsection D. I have a motion by myself, a second by Director Sassano to enter executive session. Any discussion on that motion? So would you please pull the board?
Sarah Hall.
Yes.
Lisa Stonos.
Yes.
Jeremy Scott.
Yes.
Michael Wales.
Yes.
Peggy Wakeman.
Yes.
So for the benefit of the applicants, obviously, and the public who's still in attendance, God bless you all too. So we'll retire into executive session. We will come back after we come out of executive session and to either, I guess we have three motions three possible motions that could be made. One would be a motion for approval, one would be a motion for denial, or one would be a motion to deliberate further and take advantage of that date that we set aside later this week, December 12th. And so you're all invited to stay, get sleep, I guess. I think we'll take a quick, well, let's just take a quick little break and as we move our way up to the conference room.
Mr. Wells, Stephanie Codward called in from Germany to say thank you.
Oh. Dankeschön.